After Pink O'Sullivan's allegations, another person would come forward. This time allegations against Marl would come out by a person called Lane, also known as Spaggledagger. Lane would allege how they used to look up to the Floraverse crew and was excited to join their community. However, they'd eventually, despite being a minor, find themselves in an NSFW IRC chat. According to Lane, they were never asked their age before being allowed into this chat. Following this, Lane would start talking privately with Marl, who would allegedly soon start introducing Lane to his fetish for bestiality. He would also be very upfront about wanting to have sex with Lane, despite them being a minor. After coming out with these allegations, Glib would take to Twitter to discredit and attack Lane, calling them a parasite among other things. Glib would also allege that Lane had told their age almost immediately after entering the server. They would also allege that multiple other webcomic communities were afraid of Lane, because Lane had apparently spread rumors like this before and even threatened to entrap people with child porn, although they never produced any evidence of this. Lane's allegations would get more validity, as in 2018, logs of Marl talking with a minor called Big Fluff would be revealed to the public. In the logs, Marl can be seen trying to recruit Big Fluff into making bestiality porn videos, as well as Marl revealing he's done it before and is part of a bigger network of like-minded individuals. Big Fluff would also allege to have visited the Floraverse crew's house, where they'd bumped into Glib in the nude. Glib would however vehemently disagree with this ever happening. After the Big Fluff logs were dropped on the Floraverse Discord, a mod of the server would talk with the person dropping the logs there. The mod, Gaypub, would convey for Marl that the logs were real and that Marl was sorry that he had hurt the people involved. However, despite Marl admitting to the logs being true, Gaypub would try to discredit their validity, actively, knowingly, protecting a person who just admitted to trying and having minors have sex with animals. Due to all this going down, another former partner of Glib, Jungle Kava, would make a statement saying how, when they were dating Glib, Marl had allegedly also tried to get Jungle Kava to have sex with him and their dog. Jungle Kava's story correlates with multiple parts from both the Big Fluff logs as well as Lane's allegations, with stuff such as Marl having an interest in having sex with fans at cons. Due to all of this, a toy company selling Floraverse merchandise, ESC Toys, would allegedly stop their cooperation with Floraverse. It was clear that something had to give, as this was now too big to sweep under the rug. As a result of the Big Fluff logs, Glib, Marl, and Eevee would disappear from the internet for a spell. They would move out of the state they lived in and also change their names. Sometime later, Glib would announce on Twitter that they and Eevee had parted ways with Marl. Following this, an apology letter by Marl would be released for the general public. However, this apology has been heavily scrutinized, as it seems to heavily favor Glib, as well as contradict various things that would later come out, prime example being the repetition of Glib not knowing about Marl's fetishes. This would be proven when a screenshot from a leaked Discord message will come out in which Eevee and Glib are talking with some presumed friends, explaining how Marl had tried to coerce Glib to have sex with their dog. Glib and Eevee would maintain that the chat logs between Marl and Big Fluff had been altered, but would continue to not provide anything to prove this alteration. Not even Marl would in his apology. Perhaps as a result of people being skeptical about Marl's apology, Glib would later release a statement of their own. They would write a 41-page apology letter as well as a 76-page document with their account about Marl. In the apology letter, Glib would admit to fault on various things, such as never checking for Lane's age and admitting that Big Fluff's story about bumping into Glib in the nude had been true. But the vast majority of the apology letter would continue to see Glib pushing the majority of the blame onto Marl. In the account about Marl, Glib would go into their backstory. They would talk about how they came from a home where their dad had sexually abused them and their siblings, and where they'd been forced to try and pull in money for the family. Eventually, they would meet Marl, who would try and save Glib from their messed up situation. Later, Glib would meet Eevee, and the two of them would get intimate behind Marl's back. When Marl found out, Glib would suggest a polyamorous relationship. This seemed to mostly be for their benefit, as it's repeated time and time again how Glib being with Eevee made Marl miserable. Marl would forbid Glib and Eevee getting close, and the three of them would be miserable. However, one day, Marl would spring an idea on Glib as a way for them to get money. Glib figured if they could get money and indulge Marl in this idea, then they'd get allowed more time and freedom to be together with Eevee. The deal was for Glib to have sex with a dog while it was being recorded, so Marl could sell the recorded footage and the family could make some much needed money. Based on this information, it now became evident that Glib had been lying for multiple years. They had multiple times claimed that they were not aware of what Marl had done, but also attacked and attempted to discredit the many people who had accused Marl of the exact same thing Glib had been a victim of. There was no way that Glib couldn't have known what kind of monster Marl was when they too were one of his victims, and them attacking the many victims of Marl just showed how ready Glib was to protect their at the time husband, even if it meant endangering children and the people within their fandom. In April 2023, an artist by the name of Rena would publish a short story on Twitter called Short Straw. In it, they would mention how at the age of 12, they met someone only referred to as the artist. The artist, being 22 at the time, would share mails with Rena and through that learn about their address and legal name. When Rena became 14, they would exchange vent Twitters. Here, the artist would allegedly post porn and nudes, well knowing a minor was able to look at it. Once Rena became 19, the artist wanted Rena to move in with them after Rena's mom had yelled at her for dropping out of college and quitting their job. The artist allegedly concocted a plan for Rena to escape, and that night, 2 people from the Discord server came to Rena's house. However, the plan failed when Rena's family found out all their stuff packed and called the police. One of the Discord members that had shown up was allegedly punched, and when the police arrived, they were told to leave. Rena's family would, as a result of this night, hold an intervention regarding Rena's mental health. Rena would contemplate that in addition to the trauma they had suffered that night, it would later be used as a tool to isolate and groom them. The Discord member that had been punched is given the moniker The Predator and was the first one to DM Rena when they returned online. Apparently, the Predator was scared the police were going to kill them. So Rena, instead of focusing on their own situation, instead started comforting the Predator. It would seem like the failed escape had caused the artist server to not want to talk with Rena anymore, and the artist didn't want to talk with them either. The only one left was the Predator, who after 2 weeks was writing fictional pieces about wanting to have sex with Rena. Rena claims that the Discord belonging to the artist is, in fact, a cult. Meanwhile, the Predator would try to pry info about Rena's previous sexual traumas and fetishes out of them. Eventually, exhausted, Rena would admit to the Predator that they had once, on the school bus, been the victim of child-on-child sexual assault. After admitting that, One day, the Predator would confess to Rena that they would sexually harass girls on buses when they were in high school and onwards. As if that wasn't enough, the Predator would turn Rena's traumatic story into a visual novel. In it, they explicitly talked about sexually assaulting Rena and depicted them as a doll, unable to speak or fight back. The bus incident was included, and the Predator specifically told Rena that it was about them. Rena then goes on to explain why she chooses to use the word cult. They would go on to explain how the thing that set this Discord group apart was its power structure. Moderators and the artist's inner circle had more sway than anyone else. If you were just a regular member, you had basically no say at all, and the only way to improve your standing within the server was to partake in spiritual roleplay ceremonies that would last anywhere from 8 to 24 hours. These ceremonies would include the other members of the Discord telling them how messed up they were and how the artist feels you could improve, something referred to as attack therapy. Rena then describes the 5 tenets they'd observed within the server. No one is beyond salvation. No matter how much you're fucked up, you can become a good person. Anyone bad enough in your life can and will be compared to the artist's abuser. Dreams and thoughts have the power to impact reality, so you better not think anything bad. Violence is abhorred unless the artist is the one purveying it. Quit your job and all your aspirations and become full-time to help develop the artist's artwork. Rena would then go on to show one of such contracts, and in the bottom it was signed by Glib. There was no longer any doubt. This was a story about Glib's Discord. The artist was Glitchedpuppet. Rena would continue explaining how when the Predator's abuse had been brought to Glib, Glib announced they wished to rehabilitate the Predator. When pushed on the whole thing, Glib allegedly said, "I'm monitoring how they're doing in therapy so they can never do what they did to you to someone else." In other words, Glib and the rest of the Discord, despite being aware of the Predator's behavior, kept the person around, and any criticism about this was brushed off as the person being ableist due to the Predator's alleged borderline personality disorder. After a year, Rena allegedly left the server, or as they referred to it, the cult. They supposedly wrote a letter full of their feelings in the hopes that it would encourage other people to escape the Discord as well. However, Glib would dismiss the letter as a bunch of lies, and thus the letter fell on deaf ears. To the rest of the Discord, Rena was now just someone who had betrayed the Discord. According to Rena, the letter was never posted publicly, because if it were, it would reveal that the Predator preyed on them, and that would in turn show Glib and the others in the inner circle were complicit in endangering minors. Upon this post coming out, it sent the Floraverse community in a frenzy. Many were quick to dismiss the story due to how it was being presented, with Rena taking a serious allegation and depicting it with art and allegations one would typically expect from an angsty teenager. For example, Rena would compare the servers to Jonestown and for some reason battle passes. But on the other hand, some of the people discrediting Rena's scene would admit to not having read it in the first place either.
Hi Rena, you probably won't read this, but that's okay. I'm writing this more for me than for you. I haven't read your scene. I've seen a couple of things from it, enough to know you're lying by omission a lot.
However, there were also those who believed it, especially because a lot of what Rena was saying had already been true in the past, with Glib surrounding themselves with bad people, encouraging people to live with them, and most worrying of all, seemingly doing incredibly little to protect the minors in their community from sexual themes and predators. Minors that Glib is very well aware of. Glib would take to Twitter to plead their case and showed screenshots of Discord conversations at the time where Rena had been kicked out by her mother. It showed that Rena had been kicked out, and it would seem Glib wanted people to take note of how the Discord had come with multiple different solutions to Rena's issues, but instead people would note how only 3 minutes after Rena had confessed to being kicked out, Glib would appear and immediately offer plane tickets.
Not to rule it out, but yeah, Ash could be there tomorrow night, help you pack and keep your mom off your back, get your car looked at our garage, and leave Tuesday morning. If you think you're okay at your dad's, that's fine too. I don't think I'm okay there either. Alright, then we can make a game plan for ASAP. But I'm going to have him move all my stuff out of my room tonight. I just called him. What airport are you closest to? Oh, clever. Ash, I'm so glad you're on top of this. Atlantic City, I think, but Newark is cheaper. Fuck. Should I get a plane ticket? Are you being denied access to your possessions too? I don't have anything sorted out. I don't know. Do you want me to come help? Do you think you can do it alone? I'm too scared to go back inside. She told me to move in with my dad. I'm going to ask him to pick me up, but I don't know if he has a vehicle. Rena, is that what you meant? To live with your dad until you can get your stuff taken care of? Could I ask my dad if you can stay with me for a bit?
Glib would also accuse Rena of being romantically involved with the former moderator for the Floraverse Discord, Reynard, who was a self-admitted pedophile and zoophile. They would furthermore post chat logs of them confronting Reynard about these things, who would admit to their wrongdoings.
You're being so highly vague when you talk about it. That's still acting in shame. Validation for what? Can you even talk about what you did? You keep being vague, and I can only assume things, such as, I don't want to keep looking at bestiality and children. Did you look at videos of real children? That's a new one to me if you did. But you said looking at bestiality and children? Did you do this? It would probably help to lay out your actions as you understand them, so that no one gets misconceptions. I looked at bestiality and I looked at pictures of children, yes. I did not look at children in sexual situations. I pushed the boundaries of Is, Krona, and Buzz while ignoring the pain of Rena in order to get good feelings, in order to get validations that I could push those things, that I could feel that way. For Is, Krona, and Buzz, I pushed the angle of bestiality, and with Buzz in particular, I pushed them to look at videos. I looked at pictures of children, yes, I did not look at children in sexual situations. So you looked at pictures of children just being children, and followed them sexually? Yes.
In fact, both Glib, Eevee, along with someone called Boss, Vera, and Opa, would all come out against Rena with scathing Twitter threads and co-host posts. The group would all claim that Rena had painted a narrative that was untrue and unfavorable to the group, who had allegedly only tried to help. They would claim that Rena had accused them of kidnapping when that was never alleged, and even comedically shows in the attached screenshot from Rena seeing them stating how they went along with the suggested plan.
I'm not sure how to process something. I saw a scene in which the author, in a terrifying font, writes about two cultist human traffickers coming to their house to kidnap them, and doesn't disclose one of these traffickers is a current friend of theirs who worked on the scene.
Glib would, for some reason, also go hard on the fact that Rena was dating Reynard, the aforementioned self-admitted pedo and zoophile, perhaps as a way to discredit Rena's words. Glib did admit that they had offered Rena a place of refuge from their allegedly abusive family and offered Rena a job. But perhaps the most disturbing thing when reading Rena's story was the alleged predator who had taken Rena's traumatic story of being sexually assaulted and turned it into a story that was then published. Glib had not commented on this in their tweets, and a cursory glance on the adult sister site of Floraverse, Forbidden Flora, one could find the story under the title Routine Maintenance. Going through the story, it would introduce the character Voss, sharing the same name as the author of the piece, who would indeed find a person, referred to as a doll, on a bus and abuse it, with accompanying text saying stuff like,
Some argue dolls exist to be violated. They take the place of those we would otherwise harm, but we are all made to be someone's doll at some point.
It would continue saying,
We all become actors to play out someone's fantasy. Either we are cast based on qualifications, or we are built from the ground up for the sole purpose to play a role. Replaying pleasure, replaying pain.
The story would then show Voss assaulting the doll. This proved, without a shadow of doubt, that as exaggerated as Rena's story maybe was, it contained truth. And worryingly, the truth seemed to exist in some of the more concerning parts of the story. Rena's story blew open the dam, and allegations of the Discord server came out in floods.
I hadn't seen this, but this is about my visual novel, and Rena twisted some truths about things. Rena had trauma about a time they were sexually harmed as a child on a school bus. I had an experience where I did something sexual towards a friend while on a school bus without proper consent. I included imagery of that in the visual novel that had to do with feelings going in Voss in E-Star regarding how Voss was handling AI programming. But my initial feelings was about, am I a monster for my intrusive thoughts, and does my past make me a monster? I was afraid of how we both were friends, but when I heard about their experience, I associated myself to having also harmed someone on a school bus in my youth. And that made me feel like, what if I have intimate feelings about this person? Does this make me a monster because I had not learned what intrusive thoughts were okay to have? The school bus scene in my visual novel was about me having negative feelings over my sexuality, my intrusive thoughts that I admit I had about you. The Raziel commission was between Raziel and Ash's character MP, and it was never meant to involve you, but it did have feelings that were attached to you. The visual novel was like, you were hurt on a school bus and I hurt someone on a school bus, so I felt like we were on two sides of a horrible situation, and I couldn't help but feel that I could be some evil predatory monster to you for having these feelings about someone who has a traumatic history that aligned with a time I hurt someone in my mind. I can see how this was a really alienating and scary decision, and I feel these are things I shouldn't have made anyone's business but my own and a therapist's. I'm sorry I involved your past trauma with my own thoughts about me being afraid of my sexuality. However, these were not rape fantasies.
Many of the allegations would regurgitate Rena's initial claim of cult-like behavior within the Floraverse Discord. Multiple allegations would state the same thing as Rena, that the server would use attack therapy and seem to center around and almost celebrate people's trauma and negative sexual experiences, supposedly with the intent of creating a safe space where everyone could discuss these taboo subjects. One former member would explain how the server made their anorexia worse due to the server wearing them down until they had finally revealed their traumatic experiences. The former members would allege that Glip and their inner circle were trying to act as therapists for the individuals coming into the server, despite none of them having any qualifications to do so.
I haven't really fully healed from the physical damage my deteriorating mental health caused from the treatment I received in the Floraverse server. I'm anorexic, and the way it works for me is that I tend to react to stress or by not eating as a compulsive method to ease anxiety, and by the time I had my test, I had already lost significant weight. I was unmedicated, deeply depressed, and suffering from untreated anxiety and insomnia, as well as taking on an approximately 10-hour workday because of deadlines. Having to come home to 5+ hours of being screamed at and being humiliated in front of an audience until a minor emotional breakdown pushed me to reveal traumatic experiences in the hopes that they would leave me alone and let me sleep drove me over the brink. Not to mention the fact that I had to deal with nightmares for weeks after as a result of digging up said traumatic experiences in a dangerous environment. I haven't yet regained the weight I lost, and even though I'm medicated now, anything related to the E-Star server is painful to recollect.
They would paint the picture that Glip and their inner circle has an obsession with trauma and hurt, and claims that that's why everyone in the server constantly talks about how miserable they are. This would typically come to light in the server's many scenes. Scenes are basically moments in which the different server members would roleplay various tough situations. According to Glip, these scenes are made to help people deal with various scenarios should they encounter them in the real world later, referring to it as emotional training. It should be stated that as far as could be found out, not a single member of the Discord are qualified to conduct nor oversee attack therapy.
Sometimes I ask to be heard certain ways in the conversation so that I'll recognize it when I face the kind of feeling later, and I'll be able to approach it more rationally. This is a kind of emotional training to be able to deal with difficult things while in the moment. It seems like a variant on CBT with a slight cross of the concept of scenes in BDSM. Get someone to act out being a hurtful person with ideas they know aren't right, and I get to work through the emotion of it and process them ahead of time when actual disaster strikes.
While the scenes are claimed to be able to help people, it seems to also be practiced as a form of punishment for people. If a member of the community has done something one of the moderators don't like, the culprit has oftentimes found themselves being drawn into scenes. This can be whether Glip did not like how a member roleplayed, or how they were tired of a member allegedly being bad at communicating their issues. A moderator also did this allegedly due to a member having made a poem they did not agree with. these scenes also seem to be conducted with little to no privacy, with people being able to join as just a spectator while someone exposes their deepest and most personal traumas. This has been compared to practices being done by cults who will do this to rid a person of their individuality and instead make them a part of the group. As stated by Glip themselves, if a person refuses to take part in these scenes, they should instead leave.
And you feel like you have to do a scene if you're gonna stay in the server, don't do the scene. Please just leave the server. That's my honest ass opinion here. I don't want people doing stuff they don't want to do. If they're not compatible with the space and they can't talk about conflict, that's fine. Don't be here.
It would, in other words, seem like it is expected that their members share private details about themselves, even if those scenes involves people having to act out scenes in which they roleplay their actual real intentions of committing suicide. Whenever a scene is initiated, apparently the Discord bot will post an instruction manual as well as a safeguard manual to ensure various rules are being followed during these sessions. However, a question about how voluntary these sessions are can be raised when reading these rules. For example, the safeguard manual states, "Remember that tests are voluntary, but that being empathetic towards your fellow entities is not." But then in the instruction manual it will state, "It is not possible to ignore if you're hurting someone else, and it will be discussed thoroughly." From this, one can start to question how voluntary it is. If you accidentally hurt someone's feelings, you're not allowed to ignore it, effectively removing the choice of participating. The Discord even seems to have rules stating that if someone makes you uncomfortable in a voice chat, you are encouraged to take them to a different thread and confront them about it. And seeing you are not allowed to ignore it, it's hard to claim this is 100% voluntary.
Voice chat community guidelines. If someone is making you uncomfortable and you want to address it, 1. Bring it up in the voice chat if you're comfortable doing so. Otherwise, 2. Move to drama club or drama class if a scene is active and message the other party. If the other party does not have drama club access, message them in Hellsider voice text and ask them to add the drama student role. 3. Bring up what happened, discuss resolution, messages, and a vessel, or otherwise solicit community feedback if desired.
Allegedly, while seeing this as a form of therapy, Glip and their inner circle would still insist on people going to see real, qualified therapists to deal with their issues. However, it would seem like not everyone on the server is on the same page about that. This would become evident when Discord screenshots were revealed of the user BexDK talking with someone called Kasran about their experiences. Bex would reveal that they finally talked to their therapist about the server, and the therapist had been shocked by what Bex was revealing and deemed Glip's treatment of them as abusive and understood why it would lead to Bex's resulting trauma.
Why do you have this grudge against Glip? It keeps coming up and it's making you unable to get this thorn out of your chest. It's more complicated than that, Cass. Then explain it to me, because nobody seems to know what's going on. I finally opened up about everything to my therapist. I never talked about Flora stuff before. I was afraid of not being taken seriously. I wrote an 18-page doc of what happened to me. She was shocked by it. She told me how Glip treated me was abusive, and that my resulting trauma is valid. Because honestly, there was something liberating about hearing that. I felt like I could finally start moving forward. It kind of sounds like it was what you wanted to hear all along. It's still very raw and painful, so my pain is still leaking. Cass, please hear me. I recognize that I wasn't being treated right over a year ago.
Kasran, shockingly, will go on to ask Bex,
I'm curious how you tried to take the feelings of Glip and others into account in your document.
Kasran would continue to berate Bex for revealing the abuse Bex had faced in the server, claiming that Bex talking to the therapist about the online community was destructive to everyone else involved.
This hurts so fucking much and you don't even care. Sure, if you say so. Why? Why are you being such a dick? You're not listening to me or anyone else at all. Are you fucking done or not? You're not letting anything new or good happen. You've become fixated on the idea that the only possible way to make anything better for yourself is to make everything worse forever for everyone else, when it's not fucking true. I don't understand where this is coming from at all. Not letting anything new or good happen? I'm learning to love myself again. I'm going back to work soon. I'm getting married. Why do good things have to involve the community that nearly destroyed me? Did it nearly destroy you, or did you nearly destroy yourself on it? What am I doing to make things worse besides looking out for myself for once? Maybe I did. The end is the same. There's nothing to be gained in going back. You're looking out for yourself in a way that ignores the effects that actions have had and are having on those around you. What effects? Why am I not allowed to exist away from this shit? I don't want every little thing I do to make its way back there. That makes me feel so fucking trapped.
Casran will go on to try and gaslight Bex into believing that Glib hadn't actually told them their absence was for the better, and claimed that Bex only remembered it as such.
People hurt me by absence. I've been gone since May. It was better when I left. I disagree that it was better, but also, please don't fixate on that one thing as a way to ignore the rest of what I said. Glib told me it was better, so... Oh my god. Stop, I'm done. You remember it as Glib telling you it was better, because you hold a grudge. Do you want the cap? I virtually understand there's a tone and context you're not taking into account. The tone is sarcasm, like I'm an idiot for even asking.
Bex would provide screen caps of conversations they had had with Glib proving their case, yet Casran was quick to move the goalposts.
Really? Missing tone and context in order to support a predetermined conclusion seems to be the story basically anytime you talk about your perception of things that people in the Flora server did to you. Has it been more comfortable without me in the server? What do you think? Probably yes. Yeah, it's nice to not have to deal with as many episodes every other day. Do you believe me when I say I do want to get better? Yes. I doubt that. Do you think it's your complete absence that was necessary to make the server more comfortable, or just the absence of your episodes that Glib mentioned? I don't care, I'm so tired. Well, there's your fucking problem.
Apparently, this conversation had come to be due to Bex confiding in Casran that they didn't appreciate that Glib had made a porn comic mocking their bad feelings. The members of the Discords are seemingly also expected to make an original character and roleplay as this character. In fact, should they refuse to do so, there are multiple parts of the servers they will not have access to.
Remember to put animals in 6311557408405588612. Kinda random, but it says no access where a channel should be. You probably do not have access to the channel because you do not have entity. The channel is Floraverse. Remove the message since it's been about 2 hours. Gee, forgot about entity. Wait, what did you delete? A video with a real life animal in it. They are only allowed in Floraverse. Like pics and bits of real animals aren't allowed outside of there.
This is despite the Discord is not promoted to be a role-playing server.
If you're interested in joining the Floraverse Discords for yourself to see what's up and actually talk to the community yourself, the links are discord.gg/Floraverse and discord.gg/FloraverseEstar. You will have to manually add these links to join.
Reading this, it spurred me to look up what qualifies a cult as a cult and what tactics they typically use. That's when I came across Rick Alan Ross. Rick Alan Ross is an American deprogrammer, cult specialist, and founder and executive director of the non-profit Cult Education Institute. When looking into him, I found him saying this.
Anyone can be captured by a cult. I've deprogrammed 5 medical doctors. How does that happen? If you're in a position where you're isolated, you're alone, you're hurting, you're worried, and a group comes along and says, look, we've got the answers. We can help you. They've got to have something good. Otherwise, no one would be taken in by them. This is typical of what's called large group awareness training organizations, where they bring people together in a kind of seminar setting. And what we're talking about is a kind of process that goes on day after day after day. During this time, you are constantly with other NXIVM devotees. You're constantly hearing their jargon. You may not be getting enough sleep. You may not be eating right. You're kind of getting worn out. And at the same time, you're being subjected to a kind of inquisition in which the group expects you to cathartically divulge everything about yourself. What is your ultimate pain? All of this leads to a point of exaltation and a kind of ephany. And from that point forward, you may be hooked. And then what the group does is they encapsulate her, and then they mimic her. And what they're doing by mimicking her pain is they're, in a sense, dismissing her. And she's no longer an individual. She's part of a collective. It can become hypnotic, and it can become mood altering, and it can be a trance-inducing process. And so this becomes an avenue of manipulation. And many groups will handle things in different ways, but the general pathway is to lose your sense of individuality, autonomy, critical thinking, your ability to analyze alone. Instead, you need to be dependent upon the group to experience this with you, to guide you in your perception of what it is that you're seeing.
A study made by the Australian government on escapees from actual recognized cults would also state the following about the effects of their former members. Symptoms former members experience are depression and suicidal tendencies, feelings of loss and loneliness, anxiety and panic attacks, anger, guilt, symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder such as nightmares, dissociative symptoms such as floating, and family-related issues. All things the former members of Floraverse has claimed to have experienced. Kim Bolan and Gordon Lindblom have also been used when discussing the cult-like behavior of the Discords. Kim and Gordon have written an article in the Cultic Studies Journal Volume 9 titled Psychotherapy Cults, an Ethical Analysis, that was published by what is today known as the International Cultic Studies Association. Several and entire paragraphs have been used to compare the server to what is called a psychotherapy cult. And entire websites have been made to point out exact practices being done by the servers. It is hard to argue in any serious capacity that the server is actually a cult, but judging by testimonies from former and even a few secret current members, there does seem to be parallels to that of cults and a cult-like behavior. Acts such as demanding its participants to be completely open and vulnerable while offering them protection against whatever may come out as a result, treating refusal of this as non-compliance or character flaws, encouraging participants to take on new identities, group pressure to force people to submit to quote-unquote therapy, and striving for a perfect standard of mental health as defined by the group are all telltale signs of a cult. There are also wider known steps, such as the removal of the members from friends and family, making them financially dependent on the cult, delegitimizing former members, and the conviction that the front figure of the cult is the ultimate authority.
I think we have about wrapped up the mean parts in this scene. I think we've been moved on from that for a bit. I have an assignment for you. I want you to go back over this scene and write about each of the places where a memory or experience came to mind when I spoke or when you were replying, and why. I want you to do it by yourself at first and then share it after a day of sitting on it. Okay, this is part of connecting the scene experience. I want you to come up with questions for me about why I asked or said or did things I did too. To obtain that character, here's my list for you. Apply for 5 different jobs, try to make 4 different recipes, meditate for 30 minutes on 3 separate occasions, draw 2 different gift arts for people who you know are okay with it, take a walk once per day 5 different times. That's my schedule for you. Complete these things and log each time you do one in Encore Medical Bay. And log how you feel about it. And try to have an attitude of hope woven in even if you feel bad.
While it can be speculated on whether or not the server is aware on their members' behavior supposedly being cult-like, and that the allegations are mostly coming from anonymous sources with little to no evidence besides their personal testimonies, one thing that cannot be denied is the worrying picture that is painted of Glip, the Floraverse mods, and the Inner Circle.